In the previous Soul Eater novel video, I covered Chapter 6, which wrapped up the Rockland tax arc and covered the group's return to Gregminster until Pon betrayed the group and Ted was captured. In this video, I'll be covering Chapter 7. Chapter 7 covers the events of Tir and his group meeting Viktor and their escape from Gregminster. This is an incredibly short chapter in the novel, and it's more or less the same as the game, but the dialogue is different. If I summarized it, this would be a 3-minute video, but since this is Viktor's introduction, I'll cover the whole chapter in detail. And as always, I'll be doing no editing on these videos covering the novels. If a picture appears in the book, I'll put it up on screen while talking about that scene, but aside from that, treat these videos on the novels as an audio experience. Chapter 7. Escape from the Imperial Capital. Branded as traitors and carrying the rune Windy was after, Tir, Gremio and Cleo were frantically scurrying about Gregminster trying to escape, but Craze had swiftly locked down the city and posted checkpoints at the gates. They bumped into an old familiar face, Marie, the proprietress of an inn famous for its delicious food. A helpful smile adorned Marie's face as she commented they look like they've got a story to tell. She invited them to her inn and told them she'll put it on their tab. The trio hid out in the dusty attic and Marie offered them soft towels to dry themselves and hot soup to warm them up, but Tir's spirits remained low. As he lay staring up at the ceiling, he wondered how in the world the Empire has come to this. The tyranny of the governor in Rockland, and now the cruel treatment of Ted, who had committed no crime. Just thinking about how Ted had been wounded pained Tir beyond belief. No longer able to contain his seething anger, Tir revealed his thoughts to Gremio and Cleo. He asked them when did the Empire become a country that does such terrible things without shame. Cleo responded she feels the same, that she'd heard rumours but never imagined things had gotten this bad. She then turned to Gremio and said she heard Barbarossa has been turning a blind eye, and that's why assholes like Craze and Canon are doing as they please. Tir was surprised at Cleo's words. Barbarossa had been so dignified at the time of his audience. With a forlorn expression, Gremio said he doesn't want to believe it, and he thought Barbarossa was different than their old ruler. The three of them fell silent as they each struggled with their own pent-up emotions. Gremio lifted his head and broke the silence, telling the others there's nothing they can do about the Empire right now and asking them what they should do next as they can't rely on Marie forever. Only one solution came to Tir's mind, but that solution just exemplified how powerless he was. Tir responded their only choice is to go north to meet his father Tio. Cleo replied it's a good idea. Their voices, just like those of the people, won't reach His Majesty's ears, but Lord Tio, as a friend in general, could get through to him. Cleo's words and smile made Tir's heart feel lighter. She then peered out the window checking on the situation outside. She told everyone the Imperial Guard are still on the streets, so they need to wait for things to die down. The three of them fell asleep that night, wrapped in blankets that Marie had brought up for them. The next day, Tir was restless. His heart weighed heavy thinking about Ted and wondering if he managed to escape, but deep down he knew Ted couldn't have defeated all of those soldiers without his rune. Tir wanted to take a look at the mansion to deduce how the battle went and to see if Ted had been able to escape. He waited until after lunch and grabbed his staff when Gremio and Cleo weren't looking and quietly made his way down the stairs. Just as he grabbed the doorknob of the front door, Marie called out and asked him where he's going. Even if he told her, there's no way Marie would have allowed him to go, so he took off running, but the moment he got out the door, he smacked right into someone. A man told Tir to watch where he's going and called him a pipsqueak. Tir picked himself up and stared at the man who was cursing and scowling at him. It was a commanding officer of the Imperial Guard with 5 soldiers behind him. Tir bowed and apologized, but one of the soldiers grabbed his arm and told him to wait a minute. The soldiers then surrounded Tir and berated him. Tir again apologized, trying to keep a low profile. One of the soldiers recognized Tir, and just as he commented he's that wanted brat, Gremio's voice could be heard crying out, "Young master." Cleo forced her way through the guards and demanded to know what they're doing, but Tir secretly signaled her to stop. The commanding officer asked if he said young master and commented they just caught the McDohl brat skipping out on his bill. Tir kept his head down and the soldier drew his sword and held it to Tir's chin. Tir gritted his teeth and stared at the soldier's sword. The soldier told Tir to look up or lose his nose. Cleo drew her knives and Gremio drew his axe. The soldiers reached for their swords, and just when a sword was gleaming at the tip of Tir's nose, a deep voice rumbled from behind them, telling the soldiers, "You big shots have done enough." Everyone looked in surprise and found a man leaning against the doorframe watching them with a faint smile. He was unkempt, had a 5 o'clock shadow, and looked in need of a haircut. His huge arms bulged out of his tan leather vest, and his torso was thick as a tree trunk. He told the soldiers to hold their horses and not to do anything dangerous. He told them to use their heads and asked them if they really think a wanted criminal would be stupid enough to stick around town and go for a stroll. The man pushed down the commander's arm. Tir kept his eyes on the lowered sword and wondered if this man was rescuing them. The commander lost some of his momentum but didn't seem entirely convinced. The commander replied he may have a pint, but... The man told the soldiers they've done enough and pointed at Tir, whose head was still down. He then commented that the kid is about to burst into tears any moment now. Right on cue, Tir sniffled and acted like he was wiping away tears. The man asked the soldiers if they really want their crowning achievement of the day to be making a child cry. He then said to them they must be exhausted after being up all night searching for rebels, and suggested they sit down and enjoy some peace and quiet while he kicks the little brat out. Maybe it was his sheer willpower that persuaded them, or maybe they were just too tired to care, but the commander finally returned his sword to its sheath. The commander called Tir a brat and told him to watch where he's going from now on as he took his soldiers into the inn. The man then shoved Tir and kicked Gremio in the backside. Tir cried out ouch and asked him what he's doing. The man told him to quit whining and get out of here as he's ruining the view for the Honourable Imperial Guard. Though the man shoved Tir and yelled at him, something felt strange about it. However he had gone about it, this man had saved them from certain disaster, and gratitude filled Tir's heart. The man pushed them a short distance from the inn to a shady spot under the trees where he stopped kicking Gremio. A broad grin split across his face as he let out a laugh and commented that was close. Cleo had a sour expression. She had been on the receiving end of more than one of his kicks as well. Nevertheless, she thanked the man for helping them. The man responded they were both in trouble and he wasn't sure how he was going to pay the bill for his lunch as he gave his belly a pat and smiled in satisfaction. "Bill for lunch?" they asked him. The very instant they looked back to the inn, Marie flew out the front door in a great rage. She crossed her arms angrily and began looking about. Tir was astonished. He had just thought the man had said and done everything he did to save them. Gremio was angry the man used them to skip out on his bill. The man told Gremio to relax, it's all good. He then turned to look at Tir and said he did a good job with the waterworks. He then said see ya and turned to leave the dumbfounded group behind. Acting on impulse, Tir shouted out at the man to wait. The man responded what's up and said even if they want to thank him, he's too stuffed to eat another bite. Tir told him they're in trouble and asked him if he can help them out. Gremio called out no and grabbed Tir by the arm and asked him how he thinks this lout can help them. Tir was impressed the man had the nerve to stand up to the Imperial Guard and talk them down. He had a feeling the man was shady, but he felt like taking a gamble and seeing if he could get them out of the capital. The man laughed and said he thought he was just a little kid, but he must be the McDohl rebel the guards are looking for. He rubbed his stubbly chin as if he just thought of an idea, then lowered his voice and said he'll help them on one condition. Gremio grumbled, but Tir wasn't fazed and agreed so long as he gets them out of the city. The man replied leave it to him. He then walked over to Gremio and asked him if that axe is his only weapon as he patted him down. With a puzzled look, Gremio responded yes and asked the man what he plans on doing. The man finished searching Gremio and approached the city gates. He exchanged a handful of words with the guards and the three couldn't contain their surprise as the guards stretched exaggeratedly and began leisurely strolling towards the park in the centre of the city. The man beckoned them from the gates to come over and the three followed him out of the city. Halting in a meadow outside the city, Tir asked him how he got them out of the city so easily. The man replied it was simple. He pulled out a leather purse and gave it a little shake in front of Tir. Tir asked him, "You mean you..." The man cut Tir off and replied he guessed it. He bribed the guards. He told them the guards were grinning the moment they saw the money. Cleo said that's sad and Gremio wondered out loud that the man said he didn't have any money earlier. The man grinned and handed Gremio the leather purse as he said that's why he made the donation. He told Gremio to keep a closer eye next time. Gremio shrieked that he stole his wallet. Before Tir even had time to admire the man's quick work, the man turned to Tir and reminded him of his promise. Tir responded he made a promise and he intends to keep it. The man laughed and told him he's a good kid and he expected no less from a son of the McDohl family. He then said it's nothing difficult, he just wants him to meet somebody. Tir asked him who, and the man responded he can't tell them yet, but they need to head southwest to Lenin Camp. The man then asked Tir what his name is, and Tir introduced himself. The man then revealed his name is Viktor and asked them if they're ready to head out. He told them that Lenin Camp has good food and one sip of their beer will turn them off that watered down Imperial crap they serve in the capital. Tir responded he'll keep that in mind. Talking with Viktor, Tir resolved to go to Lenin Camp before he had even realised it himself. He knew he wanted to go north as soon as possible to find out if his father could locate Ted, but he didn't think it would hurt to go with Viktor for just a little while. Tir shouldered his staff and asked Viktor how far it is to Lenin Camp. Viktor commented it'll take about a week to get there on foot as he turned his back and began walking. The trio followed after him, but as the capital faded into the distance, Tir looked back at the city where he had lived all his life and wondered if one day he'd be able to return. And that's the end of chapter 7. I kind of broke my own rule on this one by covering the entire chapter in detail, despite the only real difference here being the dialogue, but it was Viktor's introduction and it was short, so I had to. Anyway, in the next video I'll cover chapter 8, which covers the group arriving in Lenin Camp and meeting Odessa and the Liberation Army. This is where the story begins to ramp up and it plays out very differently than it did in the game. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.